Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. That is not a warning, that is a diagnosis. And if you are honest with yourself right now, you already know exactly what part of your life it is describing. There is a version of you that comes out when nobody is watching, not the version that shows up to work, not the version that texts back responsibly, not the version that holds it together in public, not the version that says the right things, I mean the other one. The one that appears at 1 am, when the phone is in your hand, and you are about to do something the morning version of you will have to answer for. The one that reaches for the drink when you said you were done. The one that sends the message you spent 3 days deciding not to send, and then sends it anyway in 40 seconds flat. The one that picks the fight, destroys the thing that was working. Walks straight toward the fire it just promised itself it would walk away from. Every man knows exactly what I am talking about. You do not need me to describe it in detail, because it is already playing in your head right now, your specific version of it, your particular fire. The thing that has cost you not once, not twice, but repeatedly across years, across relationships, across versions of yourself you genuinely believed were finally past this. And here is what you have been told to do about it: be stronger. Have more discipline, wake up earlier, cold showers, accountability partners, 40-day challenges. The entire industrial complex of masculine self-improvement handing you the same tool every time: willpower. As if the answer to a house fire is a slightly bigger bucket. It has not worked, not really, not at the level that actually matters. Because the urge always comes back. Sometimes it waits weeks, sometimes months, but it comes back with the same force, often more. And when it does, when you are standing again in the wreckage of something you built and destroyed with your own hands, the voice that speaks loudest is not your enemy's voice. It is your own, telling you that you are weak, that you lack what it takes. That other men have figured this out and you are still here, still fighting the same battle, still losing. That voice is wrong, not about the battle. About the cause. What you are fighting is not weakness. What you are fighting is a force you have never been properly introduced to. A part of yourself so old and so powerful that civilization itself was built partly as a structure to contain it. And Carl Jung spent the better part of a century trying to understand exactly what it is, where it comes from, and why fighting it directly is the one strategy guaranteed to make it stronger. What he found will not make you comfortable, but it will finally, for the first time, make you free. Picture the most controlled man you know. The one who has it together in the way that makes other men quietly measure themselves against him, disciplined, reliable. The kind of man who does not crack under pressure, who keeps his word, who seems to have mastered the thing most men are still fighting. Now picture what happens behind closed doors. Because there is always something behind closed doors. Jung understood this with a precision that borders on the uncomfortable. He observed across decades of working with men that the more rigidly a man constructs his external identity around control and respectability, the more violently the unacknowledged parts of him express themselves in private. The iron-willed executive who destroys his marriage in secret. The disciplined athlete who collapses into the exact behavior his whole public identity is built in opposition to. The man who preaches restraint who is consumed by what he cannot restrain. These are not exceptions, these are the rule. And Jung gave the thing responsible for them a name. He called it the shadow, not evil, not a demon. Something both simpler and more confronting than that. The shadow is every part of you that was never allowed to exist in the light. Every hunger that was too raw, every anger that was too inconvenient, every need that was too vulnerable. Every desire that did not fit the version of yourself you were building for the world to see. You did not destroy these things when you pushed them down. You cannot destroy anything in the psyche. You compress them under pressure. In the dark, where they have been growing ever since, fed by every additional thing you have suppressed. Waiting with the patience of something that has nowhere else to be. And when the urge hits you, that sudden overwhelming force that seems to arrive from nowhere and override everything you know to be true about what you want your life to look like, that is not weakness breaking through, that is the shadow finally loud enough, finally pressurized enough to breach whatever you built to contain it. It is not trying to destroy you, it is trying to get your attention. It has been trying to get your attention for years, and you have been responding by fighting it harder. which is the single most effective way to ensure it comes back stronger every time. Jung wrote it plainly: what you resist persists. What you suppress does not dissolve, it accumulates. There is a concept Jung returned to that the self-improvement world has never fully reckoned with. Because it dismantles the entire foundation the self-improvement world is built on. He borrowed it from the Greek philosopher Heraclitus and called it enantiodromia. It means the tendency of anything pushed to an extreme to become its opposite. Read that again in the context of your own life. The man who defines himself entirely through discipline, whose entire identity is built on what he does not do, what he does not feel. What he does not allow is not moving away from his urges, he is compressing them. Every day of rigid suppression is another day of pressure building behind a structure that was never designed to hold indefinitely. And when it fails, because it always fails, it does not fail gradually. It fails in direct proportion to how long and how completely the suppression was maintained. This is why the most catastrophic losses of control always come from the men who appeared most in control. This is not irony, this is physics. A dam does not leak slowly when it breaks completely, and the flood is proportional to everything that was held back, not to the strength of the final straw that broke it. There was a man, former military. The kind of physical and mental discipline that most men cannot even imagine sustaining. 2 combat deployments, decorated. The person everyone in his unit went to when things went wrong because he never cracked, never showed fear, never showed doubt, never showed anything that could be read as weakness, came home, and within 18 months had lost his marriage, his relationship with his children, his career, and very nearly his life, to a series of decisions that nobody who knew him could reconcile with the man they thought they knew. He had not changed, he had simply run out of dam. Everything he refused to feel in those years of iron control, every moment of fear he converted into performance. Every grief he transformed into mission, every crack he sealed before it could show, had been accumulating the entire time, not disappearing. Accumulating, and when the structure finally gave way, it did not give way a little, it gave way all at once. With the full force of everything that had been waiting, Jung would not have been surprised. Jung would have seen it coming from the moment the man decided that strength meant feeling nothing, because that decision is not strength. That decision is a guarantee, written in the psychology of every man who has ever made it. That what is unfelt will eventually be unlived in the most destructive way available. Here is the thing nobody tells you. The thing that is tempting you is almost never actually what you want. The drink is not about the drink, the pornography is not about the women. The rage is not about the man who triggered it, the affair is not about the other person. The self-destruction that wears the costume of freedom is not about freedom. These are the forms that real needs take when the real needs have been denied every legitimate channel. The urge is a messenger, carrying something true, dressed in the costume of the thing it knows you cannot resist. And every time you fight the costume, every time you white-knuckle your way past the surface expression of it, you win the battle and leave the messenger standing at your door, still holding what it came to deliver, with nowhere else to go. And a reason to knock louder next time. Jung described this through what he called compensation. The psyche seeks balance the way a body seeks homeostasis. When something essential is entirely absent from a man's conscious life, when a man has suppressed every vulnerability, every acknowledgement of limitation, every genuine need, the psyche compensates by producing the precise opposite in the unconscious. And that opposite does not arrive politely, it erupts, in the form of the thing the man would least want to admit belongs to him. The question that changes everything is not how do I stop this urge, the question is what is this urge compensating for? What is so absent from my actual life that my unconscious has been forced to produce this, in this form, with this particular intensity? At this particular moment, there was a man who had fought the same compulsion for 11 years. He had tried everything, therapy, 12-step programs, accountability software, moving cities, new relationships that he promised himself would be different. The compulsion always returned, always, and with it returned the same shame. That particular corrosive self-contempt that comes from a man who knows better and cannot stop. The kind of shame that eventually stops feeling like a response to behavior and starts feeling like an identity. Then one day he asked a different question, not how do I stop this, but what is the specific feeling that comes immediately before the urge arrives? Every single time, he sat with that question honestly for the first time in 11 years, and what he found was not complicated. What came immediately before the urge without exception was a feeling of complete invisibility, of profound unimportance, of being a man who was working and producing and showing up, and mattering to absolutely nobody. The compulsion was not about pleasure. It had never been about pleasure. It was about 10 seconds of feeling real, of feeling like something other than a function. It was the only place in his life where he was not performing, even if what he was doing was destroying him. He did not have a discipline problem. He had a starvation problem, and no amount of discipline addresses starvation. You do not cure hunger by learning to resist food. You cure it by eating, and the thing he was starving for had nothing to do with the thing he kept reaching for. It was just the only open door in a house full of locked rooms. The stories men have told each other for 3,000 years are not entertainment. They are maps drawn by men who understood something about the interior life of a man that the modern world has largely abandoned. Samson, the strongest man who ever lived, was not destroyed by his enemies. He was destroyed by the part of himself he never looked at directly. His longing for connection, his hunger for a woman who would truly see him beneath the strength, was the precise vulnerability that everything else in his life was constructed to conceal. Delilah did not defeat a man who had mastered himself. She found the one door he had never opened and walked right through it. His power and his destruction came from the same unexamined place. The thing he never integrated him. Hercules' 12 labors, the man who held up the sky with his bare hands, killed his own children in a fit of madness sent by the gods. In Jungian terms, the gods did not send the madness from outside. The madness was always inside. It was the accumulated force of everything a man of that particular construction refuses to acknowledge about himself. The rage, the grief, the unbearable vulnerability beneath the impossible strength, erupting through the only channel left available after everything else was sealed. And then there is Odysseus, the man who did not try to be stronger than the sirens. He had himself tied to the mast. He ordered his crew to ignore everything he said while they sailed past. He designed the entire system around an honest acknowledgement of his own weakness, rather than the fantasy of his own invulnerability. He did not conquer the sirens, he sailed past them, with full knowledge of exactly what they were and exactly what they would do to him if given the chance. That is not weakness. That is the most sophisticated form of self-knowledge in the entire Homeric canon, and it is the only reason he made it home. What these stories share, what every story that has survived long enough to become myth shares, is a ruthless honesty about the fact that a man's greatest strength and his greatest vulnerability are not opposites. They are the same thing seen from different angles. The thing that makes him powerful is inseparable from the thing that can destroy him. And the only variable is whether he knows it. You have been given the wrong definition of mastery your entire life. Mastery is not the absence of urges. A man without urges is not a master, he is a ghost. Mastery is not the suppression of what you feel. A man who has suppressed everything he feels is not in control. He is a pressure vessel waiting for the wrong moment. Mastery is not performing strength in front of other people. That is not mastery, that is theater, and theater always ends. Jung described the process he called individuation. The lifelong project of becoming who you actually are as distinct from who you were constructed to be. Not the journey of becoming the person your father needed, or your culture rewarded, or your fear of inadequacy designed, the actual man. With his actual hungers, his actual fire, his actual darkness and his actual light inhabiting the same body at the same time, without either destroying the other. This is what integration means, not acting on every urge, not indulging everything the shadow produces, but sitting with the urge honestly enough to understand what it is carrying. What need is this delivering in the only form available to it? What have I refused to acknowledge in myself that is now knocking this loudly? What legitimate thing am I starving while I fight the illegitimate expression of it? The man who can sit with his own urge, without immediately suppressing it or immediately feeding it, and ask that question with genuine honesty, is doing something most men never do once in their entire lives. He is meeting himself, not the performance, not the construction, himself. And that meeting, that single honest conversation with the part of you that has been trying to get your attention for years, is worth more than any number of 40-day challenges or cold showers or accountability systems. Because it addresses the actual problem instead of the symptom, because it treats the messenger with enough respect to finally hear the message. There is a specific kind of man who comes out the other side of this work, and he is not the man the self-improvement world is trying to build. He is quieter than that, and more dangerous in the best sense of that word. He is a man who knows exactly what he is capable of in both directions, who has looked at the darkest parts of his own interior without flinching, and who carries that knowledge not as shame but as precision. He knows where he is weak. He builds his life in honest response to that knowledge. He does not perform in vulnerability because he does not need to. He has already met the thing beneath the performance, and it did not kill him, it gave him a map. That man does not fight his fate, he writes it. Because he has done the one thing that fate requires you to avoid in order to run your life for you. He has made the unconscious conscious. You came here because something in that opening hit something specific, not general, specific, your version of the thing this video has been circling. Your particular fire, your recurring battle, the urge that keeps returning regardless of how many times you have resolved to be done with it. Jung is not telling you that you are broken. He is telling you that the part of you driving that urge is not your enemy. It is the most honest part of you, the part that has refused to pretend. The part that will not be permanently silenced by performance or suppression or shame. It is carrying something real, something you actually need. In the only form available to it, because every other door has been locked. Open a door not to destruction, to honesty. Ask what the urge is actually carrying. Sit with that question long enough to get a real answer. Because on the other side of that question is not weakness. It is the beginning of the only kind of strength that does not eventually collapse under its own weight. The man who masters his temptations masters his fate, not because he is stronger than other men, but because he finally, completely knows himself. And a man who knows himself cannot be controlled by anything he has not already looked at directly, including himself.